Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and in this video, I want to show you 13 workflow tips and tricks that have helped me to speed up my MIDI sequencing and MIDI editing workflow. This video will probably be kind of long, so if you want to skip around between the different tips, I'll make sure to have timestamps for those below. Also, some of these take a while to set up front, but in the long run, they end up saving you a lot of time, like creating your own custom presets and templates and things like that. So the very first thing I want to show you is how you can quickly create and store your own custom instruments. Now, most everyone knows that you can press Option Command N to bring up the new tracks dialog. You can create a new software instrument. You can choose the default patch, which is a electric piano, or you can create an empty channel strip. But if you want to quickly create a blank software instrument without having to bring up this window, there's actually a short key command for this. It is Option Command S. So Option Command S will bring up a new blank instrument. Now let's say that I want to create a pad here with maybe Serum here. So I'll pull up one of these Serum presets here. There we go. Let's say that I want to create a custom setting that I want to recall a lot. So let's say I've got some EQ on here. Maybe I've got some reverb, some heavy reverb, something like, I don't know, shimmer. There we go. Some shimmer on there. Let's see what that sounds like. Cut some of the bass from it. Now let's say I want to recall this patch for later at any time. Well, all you have to do is select that track, go to the channel strip setting tab up here, click and hold, and go down to Save Channel Strip Setting As. Then what's really nice about this is you can create your own folder here, and maybe I'll call this Serum Presets, and you can create custom presets. I'll just call this Beating Shimmer Pad. Now, if for some reason I'm in a completely different project, or maybe I delete that, and then later I decide I want to create a similar instrument, I can simply click on my setting tab here, go down to my Serum Presets folder, and pull up that instrument again. This is also searchable in the library here. So if I'll create a brand new one. If I just search up Beating Pad, oh, there it is, Beating Shimmer Pad. There it is. So I can recall that from either the library or the channel strip settings here. Which brings me to the second tip, creating your own custom drum machine designer kits and having custom mapped beat pads for them. So let's say I've got some drum samples here. I've got a clap, I've got a crash, I've got a couple hi-hats here, open, loose, closed, a kick. Maybe I've got a snare drum in here as well. And what you can do now in Logic 10.5 is you can drag these into the track's header area, the track header area here. And you can load all of these into a sampler instrument or drum machine designer. I'm going to choose drum machine designer. The reason why I'm doing this with drum machine designer is to show you that you can map each of these samples to beat pads on your MIDI controller. This was something that you previously couldn't do in Logic until the 10.5 update where they updated Drum Machine Designer. So on my MIDI controller, I have these beat pads here, and I want to assign those samples to these pads. Now, right now, I can use my keyboard to play these in, but perhaps these are maybe more tactile. So it's actually pretty easy to learn these. So I'll start with the kick here. All you do is you click on the input note here and choose Learn Note, and then you assign that note to the note that is assigned to the beat pad. Now you'll see that this is actually assigned to the kick and the clap right now, but we're going to fix that in just a bit. So next I'll move on to my snare. I'll select Learn Note. Then on my beat pads, I'll assign the snare. And again, you'll see that the crash is also being triggered right now. That's totally fine. Next up is the clap. So I'll choose Learn Note, then play that note on my beat pads. So off screen, I learned the input note for the rest of these, the crash and the 3 hi-hats. Now, the other thing with hi-hats is you want to put them in an exclusive group. Right now, if I play two of the hi-hats back to back, they don't behave like a normal hi-hat would. So what you can do is, with each of your hi-hats, you can click exclusive group here, and I'll put them all in exclusive group 1, which is essentially a monophonic group. So that means when I play an open hi-hat followed by a closed hi-hat, it chokes the hi-hat. So now I can play in my beat using my beat pads on my MIDI controller rather than having to use the keyboard. Now, if you want to save this kit as a custom kit, what you're going to do is click this top bar up here to actually select the drum kit. Then go over to your library and click Save. I have a folder in here called Custom Kits. So I'll give this a name. I'll call it Vintage Kit. So now if I create a new software instrument, I can go over to User Patches here, click on Custom Kits, my Custom Kits folder, then I can select that kit, and I can recall it at any time. So recalling Drum Machine Designer instruments is a little bit different than other instruments because they're essentially like multi-part. They have multiple kit pieces in them. They're more like a track stack than they are an actual instrument. So you have to save them a little bit differently than the way you do it with channel strip settings. Third tip is I'm going to show you how to quickly create new MIDI regions and pattern regions. Now, one way to do this is just to simply right-click and choose Create MIDI Region or choose Create Pattern Region. But you can actually create a custom key command for this. So if I go under my key commands, Edit, and I'll search up Create Region, you'll see there's three options here. Create a MIDI region or cell, create a pattern region or cell, and create a drummer region or cell. I don't really care so much about the drummer regions, but I do want to create some custom key commands for MIDI regions and pattern regions. So with this selected, I'm going to click Learn by Key Position, and the key command I'm going to use for this is Shift-Option-Command-M. And then for Create Pattern Region, I'm going to use Shift-Option-Command-P. So M for MIDI, P for pattern. So now if I'm out here on the track and I press Shift-Option-Command-M, it'll automatically create a new MIDI region that I can open up and start working in. And if I press Shift-Option-Command-P, it automatically creates a new pattern region for me so I can start working in the step sequencer. Now, just sort of a bonus tip here. Most of you already know that you can press P to quickly hide and show the piano roll editor. But unfortunately, the step sequencer, if you're using this a lot, doesn't have a key command assigned to it to quickly toggle it. So you can actually create your own custom key command for this. So go back to that same key commands window. I'll search up step sequencer, and there's an option here to show or hide the step sequencer. So what I'll do is I'll learn a custom key command for this, and what I'll use is Shift-Option-. Believe it or not, it's pretty hard to find available key commands in here because most of them are already used up. So P opens up the piano roll editor, Shift-Option-. Opens up the step sequencer. Now, if you use Drum Machine Designer, it's pretty easy to start building beats in the step sequencer because it automatically creates a different lane, a little different note here for each kit piece in your Drum Machine Designer kit. However, if you're trying to use the step sequencer for, say, a tonal instrument, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because it just starts you off with 8 notes, basically a C major scale. So let's say that you kind of have an idea of the notes that you want to use in your sequence, but you're not sure of the exact notes of the sequence. If that was the case, you would just play it in and record it like you normally would. So let's say that I wanted to create a sequence using these notes here. What I'll do is I'll delete all of the notes in the step sequencer. It allows you to delete all of them except for the last one. And then you can click here, or you can press Option-Command-L to turn on Learn mode, and then you can play in those notes. Then Option-Command-L again to turn off Learn mode. I'll delete that top note that I don't want there. And now I have all of the notes that I want to build a sequence out of. Here's a bonus tip for you. If you press spacebar, it's just going to play the pattern along with everything else in your song. If you just want to audition your pattern separately from everything else in your song, you can click up here to preview it, or you can memorize the key command Option spacebar. And then Option spacebar again to stop the preview. Now, one thing in particular that is kind of frustrating about the step sequencer is if you go over into the templates and the preset patterns, they don't give you an option for specific keys. Like, sure, you can load up a preset for major or major blues or chromatic or all these different scales, but what if I want a specific key? All of these kind of load up in C. Like if I choose minor, it loads up C minor. What if I want C minor, E flat minor, F minor? One thing that I've gotten in the habit of doing is creating my own custom user templates in specific keys. So you can see here I've got one C minor bass, to a lower octave of C minor treble, an upper octave of C minor, E flat minor. So let's say that I want to create a custom template for A minor for the bass, maybe for a low octave. Well, the first thing I'll do is just delete all of the rows. You just hold Command and press delete. Again, you're kind of stuck with that one row until you're done learning notes. I'll learn notes, and I'll play the notes highest to lowest. Then I'll turn off learn mode, and now I have a template that I can work with that's low to high, built low to high, the high notes at the top. I can delete this top note here, and it's A minor. So what I can do is I can click here, I can say save template, give it a name. I'll just call this A minor bass, and there we go. Now I can easily recall any of these in specific keys. Now, I like to work a lot in E flat minor, C minor, and A minor, so maybe I'll create templates for those, so the next time I come in here and start working on a song, I don't have to start from scratch every single time. Not only can you sequence in notes, you can also sequence in automation. So let's say that I have an EQ on my bass here, and I'll pull in my low pass filter, or high cut filter as they call it. And if I pull this all the way up to 20K, it's essentially, the filter is completely open. So you're not really going to hear any effect of that filter. Now, what you can do is you can create an automation lane for that parameter. So under channel EQ here, I can create an automation lane for the high cut frequency. So I can pull this up to the top or bottom, wherever I want it to go. And when you turn on notes for automation, you're just engaging automation for that step. If you click here, you can show the sub row for it, and you'll see the actual automation value. So maybe let's say that the bottom notes, I want the filter to be completely open, but the upper notes, I kind of want to maybe roll off some of the high end. So this is something you can very easily do, and you can control these things on a step-by-step basis. And you can do this with virtually any effects plugin or any synth parameter that's on the track. Here I've got the Decapitator plugin with a bit of drive on it, and maybe I want to automate the drive knob. So all I'll do is create a new automation lane here for Decapitator, and I'll create it for the drive knob. I'll engage all of the steps. And just for fun, I'll just kind of randomize it. You just right-click over here and choose Randomize. And I'll add in a bit of the stereo delay with the low end filtered out, just to kind of bring out those little clicks, almost like its own little integrated hi-hat groove. So adding automation to the step sequencer is one of my favorite new features in in the step sequencer, and I use it all the time to take something that is otherwise maybe boring and give it some motion, give it some modulation, and make it more interesting. Now, if you prefer working in the piano roll editor rather than the step sequencer, there's some cool tips and tricks in here that I'll show you as well. The first is called step input. Step input you can get to by clicking this button right here to turn it red. You can also press Option I to toggle this. This toggles the MIDI in function, and then you can press Option Command K to pull up the step input window. Now, what step input does is it allows you to play in notes on your MIDI controller without having to play them in real time. So let's say like I know the notes of a chord progression that I want to play in, but I don't want to have to, play them in real time, edit the notes, quantize the notes. I just want to play them in. So what I can do here is select a rhythmic value. I'll select a whole note, and then just play in the chords one by one. And they're automatically quantized to the grid. They're automatically the perfect length, so you don't have to go in and do any additional editing. And then when you're all done using step input, just make sure to turn off the MIDI in button, because if you leave this on and you start playing your MIDI controller, you'll start accidentally entering notes that you may not necessarily want in your MIDI region. Now, if you're the kind of person where you like to play in everything with your MIDI controller and just record it in rather than trying to sequence it or step input it in, but there's a helpful function called input quantize, or technically in Logic it's called the default quantization grid, but it's typically called input quantize or auto quantize in most other DAWs. Now, if you play something in and you're not perfectly on the grid, you're going to have to go into the piano roll after you record and fix those notes. So something like that, I'd have to come into the piano roll editor, select all of the notes, quantize the notes, and then I'll be okay. But that's just one extra step that you have to do. Instead of doing that, what you can do is you can make sure that nothing out here is selected, go over to your region inspector, and you'll see this quantize option here. You can select a quantization value even if nothing is selected, and what that does is it sets up a default quantization grid, so anything you play will automatically be quantized to that value. Now, if I check this out in the piano roll editor, you'll see that all of the notes are perfectly quantized to the grid at a 16th note. Now, the only thing you got to be careful with here is if you want to turn off that grid, that default quantization, you have to select the background, go back in here, and set this to off, or change it to a different value if you like. Now, one thing I like to do in the piano roll editor if I'm working with drums is I like to set the length of all of the notes to the same value, because in most cases, drums are one-shot samples, meaning that the length of the note, the MIDI note, has no effect on the sound whatsoever. So if you have, big long notes, like maybe you held down a crash cymbal for longer, it can just kind of make the arrangement look messy. So one of the things I like to do is select all the notes, go up to Functions, go into Edit Transform, and then there's an option here for fixed note length. So you can set the fixed note length to whatever you like. These values mean bar, beat, so like quarter notes, division. So right now my grid division's a 16th note, and then ticks. There's 960 ticks in a beat. So if I fix all of these to one division, all of these notes are going to be exactly one division or 1/16th note in length. Now, this transform window is old. It's been around forever. It's nothing new, but it can be pretty helpful. One thing I like to do with it is create a custom key command for it. You can press Command 9 to open it, but Command 9 won't close it, so you have to press Command W to close it. What I prefer to do is create a custom key command to toggle it. So I'll search up transform, and you'll see there's an option here to show and hide the transform window. and there's no key command assigned to it right now. So I'll click Learn by Key Position, and since Command 9 already opens it, let's use Control 9 to toggle it. So now Control 9 will toggle it. I can open it and close it really quickly. So you can actually pair up multiple options here. Like for example, if I want to fix the note length, but I also want to fix the velocity, what you can do is click here, unhide your unused parameters, and then I can say velocity fix to, and then type in a value between 0 and 127, so like maybe 100. So now if I click operate or select and operate, all of the notes will be shortened to this length, and also their velocities will be fixed to 100. The next tip I want to show you has to do with trimming notes to make them not have overlaps and also to force legato notes. So you can find these under the edit menu here, but it's much easier just to memorize the key commands. They'll go a long way. And I've shown these on the channel before. The first one is backslash. I'll select all these notes, press backslash. And what you'll see is this automatically trims up the note to the adjacent, next adjacent note. So I just call this remove overlaps. Then what you can do is you can press shift backslash, and you'll see that notes that have a gap in between the next note, that gap will be filled. So it's a really quick way to quickly trim up your MIDI notes. Backslash, then shift backslash, and you're done. No more manual, trimming of notes. You can get everything right next to each other and adjacent the way you might like it. And here's a bonus tip for you. I'm assuming most people know this already, but if you select notes or a note and you press Option and press up or down, you can transpose notes up or down in semitones. Likewise, if you hold Shift and Option and press up and down, it'll transpose in octaves. So that's just a really quick way to transpose notes. Now, a lot of people like to use the brush tool to create repeated notes like this. Typically, what I'll do instead is I'll just use the pencil tool, create a few notes here, like so. And if I want repeated sixteenths like this, instead of using the pencil tool, I'll just press Command R. And what this does is it will repeat those notes. And you can also use this to repeat whole patterns. Like for example, if I want to repeat this whole pattern, Command R, but maybe on the second repetition, I don't want the crash symbol. So I'll hold Option, pull that note down, and then I'll repeat this whole thing again, Command R. But maybe on this repetition, I might want to change up the beat in some other way. So to me, this is a much quicker way to repeat notes or repeat whole sections of notes. Now, this also works up in the tracks area as well. Like if I wanted to repeat all of these, someone who's kind of a noob at Logic would probably try to loop these. And then, from there, you can drag over the loops and you can press Control L to convert to real copies. But what I prefer to do is just always work with real copies. Select what you want to select, press Command R, and you can repeat regions and patterns as much as you like. Now, for my very last tip, I'm going to show you how you can use live loops as a real-time MIDI looper, meaning that you can trigger the playback of cells, record into cells, and build out a whole song without ever stopping playback. Now, rather than explaining the whole setup all right now and then demonstrating it, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to demonstrate it, and then I'll put text up on the screen so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I do it. If you want to see a dedicated video on using Logic's live loops as a live loop station for arrangement and live music performance, let me know in the comments below. It's a pretty complicated process, but it can be done, and it's a pretty powerful tool if you're trying to be like a one-man band or a one-person performance artist. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Again, that last example is it's a pretty complicated process. I could definitely do a full video on setting up live loops as a live MIDI loop station. Technically, you can even loop audio if you want to. It's even more complicated, but it can be done. So let me know in the comments if you want to see a devoted video to that. And as always, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. Thanks for the support, and thanks for watching.